everyone, this is my first video, and as weird as it can sound, I'm gonna talk about Rome's history actually, because it's one of my favorite subjects and I've been studying it since I was a little kid. And I think it's one of the most beautiful cities in the world, not just because I live in it, but it has a lot of history. And I think that nowadays, sharing history, it's really important. I just want to point out that we are not starting from the legend of Romolo and Remo that everyone knows, and we are not just going to stick to that and think that Rome was actually built that day. We need to start a little bit earlier, because witnesses of life in Lazio can actually be found in the Paleolithic age. So we're talking about like way longer before Romolo and Remo came into this world, if they even existed. There's a place that was called the Lupercale, which is a cave on the slopes of the Palatine Hill, and it's a really important place because we know that even the cavemen used that cave to probably live in, but also because after we have some evidences about some rituals, probably to gather around something that was actually religious. What is important? An important change comes between the 10th and the 9th century before Christ, and we're talking about the first Iron Age. It's really important because we can find the first evidences of life, of a real stable life in this area, and I'm talking about the Colli Albani, and especially what today we call the Roman castles, Castel Gandolfo and Grotta Ferrata. These today are places that you can go visit and just have a great meal. There are some great things to eat. I suggest you to visit them. But actually, probably they were the first places that people came and lived in. So another evidence is the Monte Cavo. We know that every year there was a ritual in honor of Jupiter, which is one of the main gods in the pantheon, and this is very important because again it shows us the evidence of people gathering around something they had in common, which is not something that happened before. We're talking about small families, we cannot even call villages, we're just talking about little families living actually together, member of a family living together. One of the most important things that we know about this moment is that it's about the burials. We have two burial systems. One is the inhumation one, and another one is the incineration one. In the inhumation one, you just bury the whole body with, of course, a funeral kit. In the incineration one, we just have, the bodies were burned, and there was also a funeral kit. In this moment, we definitely passed to the incineration method, and probably this was because these people needed more space. They could no longer use all of that space to bury people. They needed more space to live, as simple as that. The Colli Albani, they actually spread, or we think it went like that, they actually spread amongst a big area that goes from the Tiber to the Circeo. We're talking about one big area. If you see it on the map, it's actually really big for that time. And one of the most important cities that you can find mentioned about this time is Alba Longa, because it is linked to the legend of Aeneas coming from Greece to save his family. And I just want to point point out that I'm not going to talk about legends and myths unless you ask me to do it. Not because they're not great, they're not amazing, but just because I think you can be very confused if you just talk about history and you talk about legends. In some, in some points you can actually be confused because it's really, really hard to understand something that happened so many years ago, so many centuries ago. So moving on, we have to keep one thing in mind, that Rome wasn't the first city in the world, that Roman people were not the first in the world, not even far from being the first ones, and we have to admit it. And actually this area, what today is the Lazio, was in between two great and developed cultures, the Etruscan one at north and the Greek one in the southern Italy. Greeks actually came to the southern of Italy to conquer and to build some polis, some cities, and it's what we know as the Magna Greece, actually. So these two cultures were really developed, and they not only influenced these people that were living on the Roman hills and the Colli Albani and whatever. They actually had some trades going on between one another, and some of these things actually arrived in some ways. We don't know how, probably because it was in the middle, in what it's after gonna be Rome. We know it from some evidences. There is actually in Lavinio, there is a small city in the area of Alba Longa. There is an evidence of Dioscorus cult, and this is a cult that comes actually from Greece. We all know that. And another evidence can be found in three graves that we know, which are called the Barberini, the Bernardini, and the Castellani. And in these graves, we can actually find some great funeral kits with actually gold and silver. But what is really important is that we can find some objects with Greek, Assyrian, and Phoenician motifs on them. That means these things were coming from the mainland, from Greece, or from the Magna Greece, actually, or there were some people that were actually trying to copy them, and this means there was a big influence from these two big and great cultures that were already developed. We don't have to forget that actually Greece already had in this moment the first polis, the first cities, that actually organized cities. What can we get from these three graves is actually what is the first inscription. There has a language very similar to the Latin, and it says, I'm just gonna write it here, and the translation is Magno made me for Numasio. So it's probably an object that someone made for someone else, or that someone actually gave and gifted to someone else. One of the most important search for our journey is Varrone. We are going to talk about Varrone like very much, but he is an historian, and he reported that Rome was built in 754 before Christ, which is Not true. I mean, we all need a date, we all need a number. Even today, we need to celebrate, birthdays, we need to celebrate everything. So they needed it. But actually, this was an approximate calculation from the moment he was living in. You have to think that it's really hard today to like link and connect all the data that come from the sources, the archaeological finds, and the indirect ones. I mean, think about the rituals and the graves. They tell us a lot, but not every time they just put black on white what they mean and what they meant for these people, mostly. So we need to be very careful about what we talk and what we say, actually. One of the first references that we have for this moment in this area is the Septimontium. This name actually indicates an area, and there are two theses. The first one says that it comes from the Septi Montes. This name comes from the Septi Montes, the 7 Roman, like, we don't call them mounts because they are not mounts. They are more like hills, so we call them the Roman hills, the 7 Roman hills, which are the Palatino, Campidoglio, Aventino, Esquilino, Quirinale, Viminale, e Celio. I didn't think I could remember them all in just one time, like the 7 dwarfs, you know? You always miss one. And the other one, the second one, says that this name comes from the Monti Divided, which it's a reference to the palisades that actually were, dividing these areas. But whether it's the first one or the second one, what actually we are interested in is that these places were the first places to be inhabited for the first time and in a stable way. What can I say about this? People actually used to go up the hills because, the upper you go, the safer you feel. It's, again, as simple as that. We're talking about people that were not that organized, that were not that developed. Probably their decisions were actually this simple. You have to think that. What we know is that usually the graves couldn't be into the inhabited area. They need to be out of there. And this is a big point because we can find this area actually a little bit, down the hills. And this means that probably there were the first small villages and houses on the hills, and the burials were a little bit far from that. It means that they just needed more space to live. We can find these evidences on the Palatine Hill, which is one of the most important ones, and it would be one of the most important ones during Rome's history. But even on the Esquilino in this moment, we know that the first inhabited area was surrounded by walls. The sources talk about 2 doors, the Romanula and the Mugonia. The Romanula actually took its name from the Rumon, which in Latin is the river, and it means that probably was leading people to that led people to the river, to the Tiber probably. And the Mugonia actually took his name from oh my god, how you say that, from the flocks that were actually going to the pasture over there. We are talking about the 8th-7th century before Christ, and in the burials of this moment we can find also some daggers and spares. So this means that they actually were ready probably to fight some intruders. Hi guys, sorry, it's me from the future. I just realized the video I filmed was actually, I think, too long. You'll tell me, but I think it was too long to be just one. So I divided it in two different videos, but I don't have an end actually for this one, for this first part. So this is my end from another time, from the future for you. And let me know if you like this type of videos, and if you want to know more, if you want to make me some questions, if you want me to talk about something more in the specific, if you want me to talk about legends, and if you don't like them, if you don't like my videos, if you don't like me, or if this actually if this is actually a good length for my video, you want them shorter, you want them longer, just tell me. Bye.